are, or suppliers. And I didn't know how long I was going to be ill for. You know, the great thing with things like ME is they say, oh, well, it could be, you know, a couple of months, it could be a couple of weeks, it could be the rest of your life. And trying to make plans on your life when I had so many dreams, to know that everything was gone. And I actually was in this state for 2 years in bed. Now, we all have experienced when you're busy with life, you're enjoying life, and you get a cold, and you really get a cold, and you can't get out of bed, and you've got 2 days where you can't do anything, and the laundry's building up, all your to-do list is building up, you've had to cancel going out to a party. When you do that for 2 years, and then it goes on and on and on. So my boys at the time were 9 and 11, and my stepson was 8. He didn't live with us then. So I had these 3 very young boys who needed their mum. I couldn't drive. I was completely dependent on people cooking for me, cooking for my children, shopping, cleaning the house, everything had to be done by other people. Now throughout all this, I wasn't happy with my diagnosis because I knew this wasn't just in my head. And the problem with ME is that the National Health System treats it as if it's a psychosomatic illness. Now this doesn't mean that any kind of mental illness is not physical as well. As we've heard from Charlotte's amazing testimonial, the mind has so much power over the body, and you can experience such extreme physical discomfort from, you know, mind illnesses as well as physical illnesses, and they are whole. Your body is connected. You can't separate one from the other. So my mum and I, with the time that we had available to even talk or look things up, we just researched and researched and researched. And in the end, we discovered that I actually had a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Now, when I had so it took 6 years to get this diagnosis. So in that 6 years, I was in bed, I was in a wheelchair, and, you know, I could walk around the house with a stick or leaning on furniture. So it was a pretty damning life, really. And having had so much promise and so much hope for what I was going to do with my life, to see the years ticking by and not knowing how they were going to change. When I got the diagnosis for Ehlers-Danlos, it was a huge relief because it was the first medical professional who looked at me as sympathetically and as a human being. All the other medical professionals had been looking at me as someone that just couldn't be bothered, somebody who jumped off society and just wanted to feel sorry for myself. So after my mum taking me to various professionals, and we'd come out both in tears because they'd been so rude and so damning and so unhelpful, it was a real, we came out from seeing this geneticist with tears of joy, and yet the geneticist told me that it was progressive. I was in a wheelchair, I had to lay flat during the appointment because I couldn't sit up to talk to somebody at the same time. And this is after 6 years of being ill. And we came out with tears of joy because he'd been so sympathetic. And he said, you're a classic case of Ehlers-Danlos. You've had it all your life, it's genetic, your kids could have it, your grandchildren can have it, it's stronger with women than it is with men, and there's nothing we can do. We can give you antidepressants because obviously you're going to be depressed with such a diagnosis. And like Charlotte, I'd always felt that the body can heal itself. You know, you need to find your balance. And the one glimmer of light that I had with having this diagnosis was that I'd had it all my life. And until I was 40, I functioned reasonably normally. I didn't realise that not everybody lived with painful joints and all kinds of other symptoms that I'd had all my life, because I'd had them all my life. So there was this part of me that knew that because I'd had this all my life, and because I'd functioned normally in my life, I should be able to get that balance back. And it was about finding the balance in my life so that I could function again, so that I could look after my kids, so that I could drive them to parties, I could pick them up from school. All these tiny, tiny things. You know, my friends' parties, I could go there, we could have people round to the house for dinner. All these simple things in life. And walking, to be able to walk again, that was my real dream. Throughout this, people say, oh, one day you'll get better, you'll paint again, you'll go back to painting. And the real key thing there was the going back. And to me, I knew I couldn't go back. I had to go forward. And what was happening to me was like my chrysalis time. It was the time that I was developing into a new person, into somebody different, but I had no idea who I was going to be. So the moment I had this diagnosis, I went to a medical herbalist who's set up in our town, who I just instinctively knew would help. Throughout the 7 years, I had not had any treatment from the NHS, because the only things they offered were cognitive behaviour therapy and graded exercise therapy, both of which were not available in Somerset. So I wasn't able to do any of that. And luckily, I was surrounded by a lot of friends in the healthcare industry. So I had cranial osteopathy, I had acupuncture, I had all kinds of what we call woo-woo healing. I had people praying over me, I had people balancing my auras, I had everything. I even had colonics, which I swore I would never, ever, ever do. Anyway, I did colonics and met this wonderful lady called Fliss. And Fliss is quite, does anybody else here know Fliss? I know Elena knows her. Anybody know Fliss? Felicity J? She's quite a character, and I saw her 3 times. I was quite certain I'd only go and see her once, but she said I had to come again, so I went again, and then she said you've got to come one more time, so I went another time, absolutely certain that was it. And she was so good, she did change my health, but I still needed more work. So I was seeing the herbalist, I stopped doing all the other woo-woo treatments and everything else I tried, and I was just seeing this medical herbalist. And herbs are very powerful things, and she was looking not at the label of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, she was looking at me, and she was looking at all the symptoms. Now with Ehlers-Danlos, you have your connective tissue doesn't heal, so you have quite flexible joints, and if you imagine that around your joints the connective tissue is like an elastic band, with Ehlers-Danlos, once you've overstretched that elastic band, it goes floppy, and it doesn't go tight again. So my whole body was surrounded with floppy, or held together by floppy elastic bands. So it made sense to me that by pushing and being so energetic and so full of life until I was 40, my body had just had it. And it had also put my nervous system into sympathetic overdrive. You know, I was in the constant state of fight or flight because my body couldn't cope with what was going on. So in my head, that was what was happening. So the herbalist was giving me all sorts of treatments to help heal my stomach, to help heal my nervous system, to help heal my joints, to help give me the minerals and vitamins that my body was lacking and could not absorb because the connective tissue wasn't there. Now Felicity J was so good with me that I then recommended my mum to her. So she went to Felicity and had, because being genetic, my mum and my dad, and when we look back, my grandparents, all of us have had some of the symptoms of Ehlers-Danlos, but I got the jackpot and got the whole lot together. So my mum had had all sorts of stomach issues, a lot of people in my family are celiacs, so it made sense. So my mum goes to see Felicity, and when Felicity says you need to take something, you take it. And Felicity said to my mum, you've got to try these minerals. So my mum took the minerals, £24 a month, and I remember her coming, my mum used to come once a week, so to help me in the house, help the kids and everything. And so I remember her coming over, and I was on the herbal medicine, and she said, oh, I've started taking these minerals, Fliss told me to do it. So I said, oh yeah, okay. And she said, here's the brochure, and do you want one? And do you know what was interesting was I was actually quite nervous. Mum put the little fizzy tablet in a glass of water, and I was so aware of how fragile my body was, and I was quite scary about what the effects would be of taking this drink. You know, it's full of minerals. Now it seems crazy that I could even question such a thing, but I remember taking the drink, and as I was sipping it, I was thinking, what's going to happen? You know, how good is this stuff? How is it going to affect me? Anyway, I had the brochure, I had that drink, nothing dramatic happened, and I didn't read the brochure. I put it in my file of things to do one day, carried on with the herbal medicine. After a year under the herbal medicine doctor, I was able to be out of the wheelchair, I could walk with a stick, and I felt I got far more back of my life than was ever expected of me. I felt disabled. I was a disabled person in my mind and with my body. And I thought, this is as good as it's going to get. And the rest of my life, I won't ever work again. And this is me who loved working. I have got, while I was laying in bed, I ideas come into my head. You know, I've got not lists of contacts, but lists of things to do in my life. So to come to terms with the fact that I wouldn't ever work again was quite a major thing. So there I am. I'm just walking with sticks, finished the year of herbal medicine, and I've noticed that my mum's hair, which my mum's 69 now, and she's got grey short hair, but it was thinning, and I think she was scared if she grew it, it would go like mine, so she'd always have hers cut really short. And her hair started thickening, and her nails were getting stronger, and the real key thing I noticed was her cognitive memory was improving. She had got to a stage where she was a little bit forgetful, and the times when I'd been laying in bed and I'd say, oh, can you do this, can you do that, can you get this from the fridge and that from the fridge, and then she'd go to the kitchen and forget why she'd gone there. So it was frustrating, and then I had that worry that we all have, that somebody might be getting Alzheimer's or somebody might be getting older before their time. So I noticed that this wasn't happening anymore. My mum's memory was getting better. So I had a couple of months with no medication whatsoever, nothing from the herbal doctor, and feeling quite happy with my life. Luckily my husband's got a good job, so there was no pressure for me to have to go out and earn money. And I saw Fliss, and she came. I used to have or I still do, have a one day a month. I have an open house coffee morning. It was my way of keeping in touch with people. So one day a month for a few hours, anybody could come and visit and just stand around the bed, and they could all talk to each other, and I could listen, and that would be my social interaction. As I got better, I could get more involved. And I started inflicting people with my wheat, dairy and sugar-free cooking snacks. So they'd come to my house for a coffee morning, and it would be no wheat, no sugar, no dairy. So I had to try and get more and more creative so that people did come back. Anyway, I had this, so I was at this really good place, and then Fliss comes to one of my coffee mornings, and she said, oh, are you on the minerals yet? And I was like, oh, no, you know, I'm really sorry, I know I've got the brochure, and I must read the brochure, and, you know, Mum's on them, she's doing really well. And Fliss said, she went to her handbag, and she said, if I give you this brochure now, will you read it tonight? So I said, yes, of course I will, Fliss. So I did. I opened that brochure that night, and I could only have got through about 3 pages, and I read some of those testimonials, and I just knew it was right. It was the fact that our soil depletion was so bad. We need the minerals. I'd always believed that if our bodies have the right environment and the right ingredients, they can heal themselves. I also knew that my body really needed some major healing. And I think we all get to a stage when you're on medication, whether it's conventional or alternative, you do get used to having that, and you do feel that you need something. And I've had a couple of months, after years of spending hundreds of pounds a month on supplements, I had a couple of months of not spending anything. Very tempting to go on a spending spree and buy some lovely new clothes, but I thought, do you know what, I'll start, I can afford it, I'll have these minerals. So I ordered the minerals, and 2 days later, so I phoned Fliss, she signed me up, did it all for me on the phone, so it was easy. Key thing about business, make it easy for your customers. So, and she phoned me straight back, and she said, oh, there's a meeting in Glastonbury, 2 days' time, do you want to come? And she said, Peter Willoughby, the guy who set up the company, he's going to be there. So I've been toying with the idea of, you know, getting involved a bit more. You know, I'm a businesswoman, this was another possible business opportunity. So I took my 17-year-old son with me, because he's a real skeptic, and I was a bit nervous of telling my husband too much about this business, because I knew there was a you know, commitment, a financial commitment, and it sounds like it could be a scam, it sounds a bit, you know, we didn't know anything about network marketing. So I took my son with me, and all the way in the car he's going, oh Mum, you shouldn't get involved, oh dear, this just sounds like rubbish, and, it's just a money-making scheme. So we went along, Fliss was there, Elena was there, that was the first time I met Elena, and there was a really nice buzz, and Peter was there, and they did the standard SCOP presentation, and it was fascinating, and I just thought, wow, I like this, but I had 2 really major questions in my head. What if I do start selling this? What if it changes my life, and people want to know what's changed my life, and I tell them it's these